Could Nintendo be considering entering the phone space? It's been rumored before, and they've apparently had thoughts and pulled back. But now a new rumor from Digitimes comes and says that their sources are telling them Nintendo is mulling the idea of entering the handset market. Now, Gabe, there's not a whole lot to go off of here. It's basically just that they've heard Nintendo is considering it. But I thought this was a super interesting concept because the 3DS is clearly on the way out. Sales are dropping rapidly, games are, for the most part, non-existent, and there is going to be a vacuum for Nintendo's second platform. We know that they have invested heavily in mobile games as of late. What if a Nintendo phone was the de facto successor to the 3DS and sat alongside Switch as something different enough to deserve existing?
I know you and I don't really think about it a lot, but Fire Emblem, like Heroes and Dragalia Lost, like stuff like that on mobile does really well. Even Animal Crossing Pocket Camp has like probably way more people than you and I think playing that stuff. I see a lot of people still talking about it. So they have found success in the mobile market, and it makes sense, right? They are a hardware company as well. They've always made consoles and handhelds, and it makes so much sense. Now that 3DS is like going out, why not maybe try to dive into there? Because there's a problem if you want a handheld and you make it more powerful than the 3DS, because you automatically have a barrier. You cannot go more powerful than the Switch no matter what. So yeah, I feel like handheld would be something that they could do quite well.
And, you know, it may sound crazy, but just hear us out, because it kind of makes sense. You could start to bring 3DS level type experiences to this Nintendo phone, and then also continue to cross them over with the iOS store and the Google Play Store, branching your software and your characters out to many more gamers, just like they're doing with Mario Run and the aforementioned Fire Emblem Heroes, Dragalia Lost, etc. But here is where it would be very beneficial, because you could start to make a connection with the Switch and then build out that ecosystem as well. So Gabe, what if this phone connected with the Joy-Con and the Pro Controller for a much better experience than using a fake control scheme on the phone itself?
I've talked about it a few times here on the channel. I just don't play mobile phones. Mobile games, excuse me. I play mobile phones. All right, regardless, don't play mobile games really. I don't like just like tapping on stuff. It just doesn't feel right to me. I need some type of tactile feedback. So if I have a Nintendo phone and I can somehow pair the Joy-Con or the Pro Controller or whatever, that would be a huge incentive for me to even consider it, because they have to do a lot for me to consider it, honestly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to me, the biggest thing is that the games would have to be worth it. And they would probably have to be exclusive games that either had either timed exclusives or total exclusives. But I could see it being appealing to play like a 3DS level version of Mario Kart on this phone. Now, we don't know what Mario Kart Tour will be. It was delayed and we've yet to see really any details. But if they decided that they did want to invest even further in mobile, and they wanted to try and kind of bake in, hey, if you have a Switch, it'll be a better experience. Hey, if you have the Nintendo phone itself, it'll be a better experience. They could start also offering connectivity with the Switch. They could bring in shared messaging. They could bring in the coveted voice chat, which already happens through their app, but maybe this would integrate it more seamlessly. They could even, Gabe, bring in Virtual Console. What if they're saving Virtual Console to put on this theoretical phone, and the best place to play the Nintendo catalog isn't via 2 games per month and Nintendo Switch Online, but instead on the Mario phone?
There are unofficial ways to play NES and SNES games on phone. Everybody knows about them. We're not going to talk about them here, but you know, a lot of people are already doing that. So maybe Nintendo should kind of figure out a way to monetize that. They could be making a ton of money on this platform if they do decide to go this way. And I think you said something that's like really genius and important. If this like kind of stays on 3DS level, like give us exclusive games, sure, but if you do touchscreen controls well, and the graphics are like a little bit better than 3DS, and you know, make no mistake, some of these phones, and the phone, I have a phone in my hand right now, it's like I have the newest iPhone in my hand. The screen on this thing is way better than the screen on the Switch. You know, any other Android phone that's like flagship right now has better screens than Switch, we know. But if we can still somehow keep the games to run at 3DS level with maybe just a higher resolution screen, that could be really cool.
Yeah, I think as long as the games themselves don't one-up Switch games, you know, it's okay if the screen is better, because going out and selling a phone with a really junky screen probably isn't a smart move. But I think keeping the phone cheap, if it were to be, would be imperative. That's something that Nintendo has strived to do with their handhelds for a long time. So if this was to be offered at a price point much more palatable than the iPhone, than the latest from Samsung, that would be pretty neat, especially if they decided to really doll it up with a whole lot of Nintendo graphics, Nintendo iconography, Switch-style stuff. Maybe we even get phone themes before we get Switch themes.
Yeah.
I think the idea, though, of a 3DS successor is just such a fascinating one, because for as long as, you know, I've been playing games, there has been something standing alongside the home console, and it makes less and less sense to design a new 3DS that approaches Switch power or Switch graphics or Switch size when you have the Switch. And thinking that the Switch will exist for nearly a decade, it's like, what do they do? Where do they want to go? And we've always advocated for one platform, because it means more games, more focus, more money being poured into this singular Nintendo spot. But I think there is a world, since they already are investing in mobile, that they could shift a team over to make really quality experiences, or heck, even just take the 3DS teams and rather than upgrading them all to Switch games, just have them move to this space. And maybe that creates a really interesting double ecosystem again that I don't think would eat off of each other in the same way that a true 3DS successor would begin to cause physical and mental problems for Switch owners.
I think you touched on one of the biggest barriers for them to do this, and it's price, right? The mobile phone market right now is kind of crazy. Like iPhones, $1,000, new Samsung phones, the S10 or, you know, the Note 10, whatever is happening now. I don't have Samsung phones anymore, but, you know, $1,000+ like for versions that have higher capacity. They need to undercut it like crazy. Even the cheaper iPhone is still like 750 plus, isn't it? Like something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you can maybe bring that down to 500, and remember, if Nintendo's making a phone, they can get like subsidize it with all these like carriers. We have, you know, I'm going to talk about America, you know, Sprint, T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T. Like everyone just leases their phones basically at this point. At least the majority of people I know. So if you can do something similar to that, Nintendo's never done anything like that.
I think the games would have to start being at a caliber above what we have. As you mentioned, plenty of downloads for Mario Run, still a very active Fire Emblem Heroes community. But if that's what they're going to do, count me out. Not that those are bad games or not fun experiences, but it's not something that I personally really care to dip too much time into. It would only appeal to me if they were getting games, like I said, on a 3DS stratosphere. It would have to be things that climb towards like, hey, this is an actual 2D Zelda game that we want to play, right? Or this is an actual handheld portable version of Mario Kart with interesting stages and great controls. And it would allow them to spread that stuff. I don't know, speaking of barriers, how willing Nintendo will be to give games that creep towards Switch caliber to non-Nintendo platforms, even if they are mobile. They've been okay with spreading Mario across Apple and Android in a, you know, a runner capacity. But are they okay with giving a game on the level of New Super Mario Bros. To Google Play and iOS Store? That, to me, seems like it would have Nintendo feeling some palpitations and getting a little concerned.
Okay, so we've talked about connectivity with controllers, right? That would be something that makes it a little bit easier for us. You know, some cool 3DS level type games, exclusive perks, stuff like that. You know what would really need to be there for me to be able to consider this, Zach?
Yes.
A kickstand that is better than the Switch.
A new kickstand?
Yeah, we got to get a kickstand.
I feel like that's so dangerous of like, nothing can be better than the Switch. But at
No,
the same
no,
time, it
you-
better
the
be better than
kickstand
the
can be
Switch
better.
because
The kickstand
because the
can.
phone is going to be triple the price.
Yeah. It's tricky.
You know, like, I think in theory it would be very cool. And by golly, if I didn't play the games, I'd want the Nintendo phone just as a hardcore Nintendo enthusiast. And hopefully some really cool color schemes, and maybe it matches my Joy-Con, or maybe you can just snap the Joy-Con on.
Neon red Nintendo phone.
There we go. But it is just dicey, and price point, power, games, maybe them mulling, maybe it's better that they stay in the mull state, and maybe it's better that they just continue to make mobile games. I do hope, regardless, that Mario Kart Tour does level up the experience. I hope that it's not some like auto racer where you're just messing with parts. I hope that it does provide far closer to a true Mario Kart experience than what some of the other games have attempted to do. And I don't have any clue what they are going to do, but I more and more just don't see a world where a new, 3DS exists, at least in the short term. So to me, this could be them trying that idea on for size. I guess I feel like they would probably end saying,
Yeah. I mean, I have to agree with you. Again, there's just so much that has to happen for me to even consider this. And I feel like so many other people, because, phones, adults buy them, right? Like, not that adults don't buy Switch, but just phones are so expensive. Like, you don't see 16-year-olds going to buy their own $1,000 phone generally. Like, it's the parents that buy it or lease it for them, whatever the case ends up being. And if Nintendo's going to be competitive, they need to do something really, really cool. And they do cool very well, don't get me wrong, especially with software. But yeah, I think this is a little too out there for them personally. I hope it honestly just doesn't happen.
I think it's a really exciting idea just because it would give us more Nintendo games. And that is where sort of my enthusiasm comes from. It's like, okay, we're going to have this void, and hopefully a lot of them come to the Switch eShop, or hopefully a lot of them just evolve into bigger, better Switch games. But kind of nice to think of like, hey, there's another Nintendo platform out there. But you're right, like, how many people are willing to drop the Apple iOS ecosystem, drop, what they're already accustomed to just for an exclusive game? And how many people are willing to, get rid of iMessage just because it comes in Mario and Luigi Red and Green? And how many people want bigger experiences on their mobile platform, whereas most players, especially in Nintendo's native Japan, are playing far simpler experiences on their phone and not probably looking for some console level game, even if the graphics and the power match it. So it's exciting, it's interesting, but at the end of the day, I don't think this happens either. Definitely let us know your take in the comments down below. Gabe, any final thoughts?
Okay. One final thought that I did have, Zach, is whether we like it or not, mobile games are actually like super popular. I just stopped and thought about it for a second just now, right? Okay, Octopath Traveler came out, very, very successful on Switch. What do? They go instantly make a mobile game that is already going to have a beta like very, very soon. Fortnite, a ton of people play that on mobile. So I don't think we can automatically just diminish the player base on mobile, but then it just becomes so tricky to have them be exclusive for Switch. Like, what do you think about that? Just the fact that there's already almost an upswing in mobile games, and like, again, just Fortnite being there is really crazy. I would bet that Apex is on there at some point because that game is like really, really popular now, and I'm sure they're gonna try it. PUBG is on mobile. It's a different game completely, basically, but we have a PUBG mobile version. We have like Dragon Ball games. Every major franchise is like coming to mobile. So
Call of Duty, just announced.
Yeah. So I don't think we should diminish that. I can see why they want to dip their toes in, but yeah.
I think they can still achieve that via the games and probably don't need the dedicated device. It kind of sounds like a very, like it's an appealing idea that probably would result in a lot of money lost, and at a time when shareholders are already worried about them, maybe not the best idea. Also, I will call out the fact that this was back in 2017, but at the point that Mario Run hit 200 million downloads, Nintendo said that it did not result in enough sales or acceptable profit. 200 million. Now, granted, it was a free-to-start game. Maybe that was part of the problem. But in today's ecosystem, that's kind of how you have to roll. And if it's not acceptable for them at 200 million, and since then, a year and a half later, it's got to be far more than that. How many would they need, especially if they're going to dip even more money into development, and you can't go charge $39.99 for a mobile game. So let us know your take in the comments down below. Does the idea of a Nintendo phone excite you? And what would it take for you to switch to Nintendo's mobile platform over your current iOS or Android device? Maybe Nintendo uses Android and that makes a whole lot of sense, but would you make the switch? And would you even want this to happen? Or do you agree with Gabe and I and think this is not the route Nintendo will eventually choose to go? Let us know. Until next time, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Make sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. For myself and Gabe, Switch Force out.